Take on me, take on me, take me on. I'll be gone. Oh, hey, how's it going? Welcome to World Breach Report number 19. That's right. It's been 19 episodes, and you'll be able to stick with me throughout all these things. And even I am limited. Unfortunately, I would have totally hit that high note on that song. But you know, because you're here now and I got to do the show, can't really do that. I hope everybody's doing well out there in this crazy, crazy world that we have that's going on. I mean, the stuff that is happening on our planet is just pretty staggering when you think about it. Like, I don't know, the whole war and everything seems to be like we're hurtling towards something. You remember during COVID? Everybody kind of felt it during COVID. Everybody kind of knew that something was happening during COVID, but we were like, and everyone's all like, watch the birdie. And meanwhile, over here, other stuff was going on. And you feel like you were in sort of a sinister setup. And that's sort of the vibe I've got going on right now, is I feel like there's a bit of a sinister setup going on, which I'm not too sure about. Now, a week or so ago, we were talking about the grief bots, which is a just absolutely terrifying concept. But wait, in the Lovecraftian consciousness of our reality of this year of our Lord in 2026, I have fresh hell for you. Yes, indeed I do. And, it's all of us in this together. So, hey, thank you for turning in to World Breach Report, where we discuss the files that help you escape the cage that imprisons your mind, or at least helps you notice that, hey, there's a cage that's imprisoning your mind. Pretty good idea to actually keep track of that. And thanks and major gratitude to everyone who has shared, liked, and subscribed. You're always helping in this battle against the forces of darkness. And I remember reminded of that film 300, Because right now I think my user count is sitting somewhere, hovering around 300 somewhere. And everyone's like, oh, how many fans do you have in your YouTube channel? And they're like, oh, we have 25,000, or 500,000. And they'll be like, how many fans do you have on your channel? And I'm like, around 300. But my fans will kill, eat, and barbecue your fans without a doubt. And I have no doubt that, well, I shouldn't say that. My fans wouldn't hurt anyone. My fans are completely innocent of all charges and are definitely not the kind of people who would help you do anything. They're good people. And there's a great shortage of good people in the world. Have you noticed that? Like, there's friends and acquaintances. And it seems like the friends title is being greatly misused. Like, there was the joke that people used to say, friends will help you move, good friends will help you move a body, and our friends will help us move a cop's body. You know what I mean? That's sort of the joke. That's a joke. That's a jest. But that's the idea, How many people can you really count on in this society? Like, how many people, if your place was being robbed, and they heard like screaming coming from where you live, be it an apartment, be it a house, be it wherever, how many people that are not family would respond to that? Would your neighbors respond? Do you have any friends that would actually respond to that? And I've got people who I've never met who have just really reached out to me in a very real way and have shown me like love that I am so humbled by the fans that I have, as I guess what I'm trying to say here. And my own zany antics where we talk about the fact that, hey, you know what? There's interdimensional creatures that are farming us. That's kind of a bit of a fringe statement, a little bit past the fringe. As a matter of fact, we're kind of on the outside of the wire at this point going, hey, you know what? We're in a cage, like there's a camp here. And, the farming of the humans is getting really, really brutal. Like, we're a resource, like in Canada. I'm going to get in trouble with this one. We had this safe injection site policy going on where essentially we were handing out drugs and decriminalizing drugs in Vancouver. It was a massive failure, like failure on a scale that is really hard to comprehend. And what we wound up doing was creating a whole new industry based on drug addicts. So people who were addicted, and then you needed counselors and housing for them. And there was this whole governmental program that came into being. And all this was the industry of drug addiction. And it's a real thing. And it was something that was absolutely fabricated. And it was an industry, and it's still going on. It's an industry of suffering. And they're farming people. That's what they're doing. They're farming people. They talk about, it's really, really sick. And we find more and more of these industries, like, how is it possible we don't have a cure for cancer? How is that possible, that we do not have a cure for cancer? Do you know how many people cancer employs? Do you know how many people are working on the cure? It's kind of bizarre. And of course, there's a lot of alternative medicine out there been like, oh yeah, we got the cure, but they're never going to release it because you know what that would do to the cancer industry? And make no mistake, it is an industry. There are literally millions of people who are employed by cancer because there's no money in a cure. There's no money in a cure for anything. Everybody wants to have a prescription population where you have a prescription subscription, you got them and you lock them in, and now they're a resource. Now there's something you can farm. And this is the profit model. And they have a bunch of, really friendly ways of talking about it, make it sound like it's not the sickest thing imaginable, but it is. It is. And we're not the first ones to think of this. I mean, this is something that's gone on. So you got to wonder, these people who adhere to this kind of mentality, where are they getting that from? You go high enough up the food chain, and eventually, there are people out there that don't have to scrimp and save to get by. There are people out there that just make enough money that they can, their investments are making money and now they can live by the pool or whatever. But I always marvel at that. These people like Bill Gates and his ilk, right? They have just oodles and oodles and oodles of cash, like Scrooge McDuck levels of cash where they can dive into pools of gold and swim around in it and stuff like that. And so what gets them up in the morning? What fires them up? What turns them on, so to speak? And we're seeing more and more that these humans, when they're released from this sort of the shackles of poverty and of having to, just fight to survive, there's a certain group of them. I'm sure there are people out there just live their lives. They're happy. They got their dogs and they go hunting every day and they just have a good time. And they want to spend it with their friends and that's fine. And you don't hear about those guys. What you hear about are these strange, narcissistic people that seek control, that seek power, and power that cannot be bought. And that's why I find it so odd that within judges and with the people who prey on children, they have such an intense, secret, very intricate network where there's websites and code words. And I mean, you never see that with any other junkies or, any other fetish that's out there. But somehow this group, once they get a taste for that, it's like this bizarre initiation into a world that's so incredibly dark. And yes, dare I say evil, because as we have all agreed, good and evil are real things. And that sort of evil is palpable. I've talked about evil before, but when you come across real evil, I'm not talking about, goth music and people who are like, hail Satan or whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you can come across things that are evil that don't appear to be evil. Like you might come across a house, say, or a person you'll meet, and it's rare. It's very rare. You'd be like, well, I'm not sure. I kind of thought, no. If you meet someone who's evil, who's very evil, you can feel it, coming off them in waves, okay? It's like, whoa, and you'll never forget it. You can taste it. You can taste it. You can almost smell it. There's a revulsion there. And a lot of the times, there's an initial revulsion, and then suddenly it's kind of alluring, which is super dangerous. That's next level danger. So you need to be aware of that. And of course, we're all taught to deny our own senses. You could see a giant chicken run down the street and everyone like, oh, you were hallucinating. And then eventually you'd be like, well, I don't know if I did see a giant chicken running down the street. Well, obviously you did. You saw it. But the validation of having the way our validation culture exists is that if you see something, that control mechanism, that mind control is already in place to make you disbelieve your own senses, which is nuts. I mean, it's nuts on its face. I mean, granted, yes, there's not a lot of, context when you say, yeah, Sean, but, giant chickens. Well, turns out that, within 40 and phenomenon, there's a lot of stuff that's pretty strange that's going on. Like if you see Bigfoot in the woods, you can talk about it. People are like, oh yeah, you saw Bigfoot. Well, it was only 3 feet tall. Oh, it was a juvenile Bigfoot. Well, it was 21 feet tall. Well, it might have been, it was probably Bigfoot. And Bigfoot becomes this catch-all. I saw a shape. Oh, well, if it was supernatural, it's probably Bigfoot. And I put it to you, it's probably not Bigfoot, actually. We don't know what Bigfoot even is. And now these guys are claiming that they've talked up this Gimlin footage, the Patterson-Gimlin footage, for years. And they always focus on that. They don't talk about the literally hundreds of thousands of reports that have come in. Whereas, let's be real, the Patterson-Gimlin footage is one report. They have some videotape, it's pretty good tape, but it's one report. That's all. Okay, people are like, well, even if it was proven fake tomorrow, it's irrelevant because there is such a sea of information that exists out there that has happened over time that, there's no way that people are seeing something. Not everyone is lying. That is a statistical impossibility. It's insane to even think of that. But, that's the control mechanism. It's the slowly the boiling water. Which makes me think of this absolutely terrifying story, which I've come across, which I don't know, this is one of those stories that just kind of gets in your mouth and you're like, yeah, let's talk about organ sacs. What? Yeah, R3 Bio is actively developing technology to grow headless human bodies known as bodyoids. David Cronenberg Much. These genetically engineered structures contain full organ systems but lack a brain, rendering them non-sentient and incapable of feeling pain. Yeah, the Bay Area Startups Project is accelerating as President Trump phases out federal animal experimentation across government agencies. What? I didn't know that he was phasing out animal testing across government agencies. Did you know that? I didn't know that. That's pretty great, actually. I'm kind of a fan of that. R3 Bio's long-term goal is to create human versions that serve as a direct sources of tissue and organs to people who need them. Immortal Dragons CEO. Wow. There's a title. Lizard people much? Boyang Wang. Pretty cool name, though, I gotta say. If I was like, what's your name? Boyang Wang. Who wants Wang? Yeah, like seriously. Whose Singapore-based longevity fund which backs the company, stated, if we can create non-sentient headless bodyoid for a human being, that will be a great source for organs. Or a good cover story, in case it didn't actually come from the bodyoid, but you can just stamp that on the side of the box. For now, R3 Bio is focusing on monkey organ sacs. We replace live monkeys and drug toxicity testing, providing scalable models with complete organ complexity, including blood vessels. This kind of seems like one of these stories that on its face is like some seriously Lovecraftian stuff, but because you're like, oh, and they're introducing it this way, it's so very carefully constructed that it's almost like immoral if you oppose it. You see what it's brilliant, really. The company uses stem cell technology combined with gene editing to disable brain development while allowing organized organ growth. So does that mean you could grow somebody with a brain? Like Whoa, co-founder Alice Gilman said the approach eliminates the ethical issues of pain and suffering in animal research. Yeah, they're really concerned about that. R3 Bio was inspired in part by the organ shortages. I bet they were. I bet you there's big money in that. Big money in that, to be sure. But that's the kind of thing that, I don't know, there's something about that makes me kind of go, And where are they doing all this? Oh, they're doing it in Puerto Rico. R3 Bio has posted a job ad seeking veterinarians in Puerto Rico to implant embryos and monitor pregnancies in non-human primates. Non-human primates. Why did you put non-human primates? Like, are there human primates? That's very strange. Yeah, that's one of those stories that make me go, yeah, where you're sitting in the bunker and you're looking through the binos and you're like, I don't know. What do you think? I'm like, I think we should shoot. I do. I think, yeah, let's just put some suppressive fire on that. But they're not doing it. Let's throw a grenade. No. It's in Puerto Rico. The whole thing is just kind of like, Wu-Tang virus. Like, I don't know. This whole thing is just makes me kind of go over the front sight a little bit. Makes me think about what kind of tools I need to be carrying in my relatively legal countries where you're allowed to do that kind of stuff. Like, oh God, gonna move to Arizona. In any case, let's talk about Sweden. which is a good place to go if you want to pay a lot of taxes. But one thing I do got to give it to Sweden, those crazy Swedes, you know, other than their abort, other than being a fantastic Muppet, it seems that those crazy Swedes are into something. In 2023, the Swedish government announced that the country's schools would be going back to basics, emphasizing skills such as reading and writing, particularly in the early grades. After mostly being sidelined, physical books are now being reintroduced to classrooms, and students are learning to write the old-fashioned way by hand with a pencil or pen on sheets of paper. The Swedish government also plans to make schools cell phone free throughout the country. No more cell phones. Like, this is brilliant. Okay, this is such a good idea. Oh my God. Educational authorities have been investing heavily. Last year alone, the Education Ministry allocated $83 million to purchase textbooks and teachers' guides. The country, with about 11 million people, the aim is for every student to have a physical textbook for each subject. The government will also put $54 million towards the purchases of fiction and nonfiction books for students. Now, this opens a bag of worms, where it's like, well, I'm sure there's people getting, you know, money on this, and they talk about the hows and the whys and all of this. But we know why. It's because just learning from screens messes you up. We know that. Look at North America. Like, some of these kids, man, they're pretty cooked. You know, I mean, I've done my bit to try to warn people about this kind of stuff. I guess I still am. But, you know, I'm this guy who's over in the corner here talking about, like, you know, hey, Pizzagate much? Like, I'm, you know, interdimensional Loosh Farm, you know, monsters, things that are eating people. Charles Fort much, Ivan Sanderson much, Keel much, you know. But in with all of those names, there's one name which is way above everybody. The guy who brought lizard people to the forefront. That's right. I'm talking about David Icke, or David Icke, which I used to call him all the time because I actually did not know his name was David Icke back in the day before you could, you know, just go online and see these people. Yeah. So David Icke is now 73 years old. Probably not, you know, he's a treasure, this guy. Okay. And he did an interview on Area 52, which is pretty well put together. Now, of course, he's banned from Canada, and he's banned from a bunch of people in the United States, which is really weird for me. Why is he banned? Well, do you want to know the reason why? It's because a lot of people say he's anti-Semitic. What? Yeah, because there was a thing where they thought the lizard people he was talking was a euphemism for the Jews, right? But it wasn't. He's actually talking about lizard people, like actual lizard people, which on its face is so nuts that you'd think, well, why? I mean, come on. What? Why are you? What? Why? I mean, you know, it'd be like if I ran a website. It's like birds are fake, you know, that joke conspiracy website, or dragons are real. If you wanted to run that guy wouldn't get banned from everywhere because I mean the guy's talking about lizard people, but for some reason, man, David Icke pisses people off, and I invite you to check out this interview, which I've linked in the description below. Yeah, grab something that you want to, you know, sip on or whatever, and spend some time and listen to this interview. And it seems like me and Dave there, we're kind of getting a little bit closer than further apart, you know what I mean? And now that I'm a little older and I'm looking at this stuff, I'm like, hey man, yeah, maybe this guy isn't quite as crazy as we all thought he was. Maybe Icke was right. Maybe he's not right about everything. But he's, you know, he's aiming small and missing small. You know what I mean? Like, that guy is pretty close to target with a lot of stuff he's talking about. And if you haven't actually listened to the guy, I mean, you think I ramble on. Holy cow. This guy, when he does a show, no lie, he does this. He'll like get up on stage and it's like a 12-hour event. The dude gets up and just goes and goes and goes and goes. And this guy does it on repeat. Like, You think doing like a 1-hour YouTube channel thing once a week is a big deal? No, man, this guy is like, he's done tours and he packs the day. He gives a show that's so long, you don't want to go to it all. Like, it's a commitment to go to a David Icke thing, man. Like, you get your money's worth. If it's like $400 a seat, which it's not, I don't think it is that much. I think it's pretty affordable, actually. But yeah, he means it. Like, this guy, when he gets going, he's amazing. And at 73 years old, really, honest to God, if you've never given David Icke a shot, check out this Area 52 interview. It's a good one. It's a really good one. And it kind of introduces you to this dude who's, everyone's like, come on, lizard people, what? Yeah, well, do you remember when Alex Jones, they made a hippie song about Alex Jones? And he's talking about how these people are eating babies. Everyone was laughing at him. And out comes the Epstein files, and it turns out they were eating babies. Yeah, nobody's really talking about that. Because Alex was talking about this a while ago. Everybody thought, oh, that's crazy pants. You're crazy pants, Alex. And they're making jokes about it. Now, not so much. Not so much. The guy who went and shot up the Pizzagate thing that happened, the ping pong pizza guy, that guy who fired a shot and was looking for kids, which, boy, isn't he a terrible human being? Hey, I think there's children being assaulted in a pizza factory. Oh, and you went in to stop it. Okay, sounds like he's not really a seriously evil person. Let's just go with that. Maybe he's misguided. More than likely, he's some sort of a psyop, because he's dead now. Yeah, he died. He got shot by police. Very odd. Very odd. Yeah. And James Elefantes, which his name is and like in French means boy lover. Yeah, it's really, or child lover, J. L'Enfant. Yeah, it's very, you go to the Wayback Machine and, go check out Out of Shadows. It's, kind of make you want to go to Ping Pong Pizza too. I'm just saying, it's, doesn't seem like that crazy of an idea. And the poor reporter who broke the story was like, yeah, nobody's debunked it. It's not debunked. And everything just sort of like becomes like the Twin Towers, where this is so obviously fucking insane that, you can't really stop it. But there it is, man. There's the deal. That's what you got to go with. You got to somehow get past this thing, and everyone just sort of agrees that the emperor is wearing no clothes. Super nuts. Yet, it's obvious. So is it any great stress why I've changed the headline of this article, but why do archaeologists deny the obvious facts? And they're going on to say, 2 archaeologists explore the enduring myth that extraterrestrials contribute to the various ancient cultures around the world. The idea that aliens assisted the builders of ancient monuments was promoted by the Swiss author Erich von Däniken. Yeah, baby! Best-selling book, Chariot of the Gods, published in 1968. Von Däniken died in January of 2026, but his vision of ancient astronauts still captivates millions. The author has pointed to ancient structures such as the pyramids, along with enigmatic ancient artifacts, as supposed evidence of beings beyond Earth shaped civilizations of the past. Yeah! Never mind the pyramids, man. Go check out Sacsayhuamán in Peru. Yeah, go check that out. If you ever go to Machu Picchu, all of Machu Picchu is actually built around a monolithic structure. Not the terrace stuff. There's in the middle of in the middle of Machu Picchu, there is a monolithic temple of some kind, which uses these crazy stones. You go to Cusco in Peru, blows your mind. Like, if you're going to go to Machu Picchu, like, never mind Machu Picchu. Like, it's cool and everything. It looks pretty, and it's a factory, and they bring you up there, and it's like a Ferris ride. You get out of there, and you take your picture, and you're at Machu Picchu, because it's, tick the box. But Sacsayhuamán in Cusco, which you have to go to Cusco in order to go to Machu Picchu, Sacsayhuamán beats Machu Picchu like it stole something. Like, it is so nuts. And they're like, oh yeah, the Aztecs built it. Yeah, no, they did. That's just bonkers. And so people sit there and they're like, how is this possible that this ancient structure could be built by people that don't have the wheel, that don't have a written language? Like, that's more crazy. And there's blinding amounts of heaps of evidence, but yet these pinheads, these guys just cannot bring themselves to look at the obvious facts that there's something else going on here. Maybe it's an alien. I don't know, but I mean, that qualifies as what I prefer to call outworld entity. They sometimes might say a non-human intelligence. Well, that would include dogs and dolphins, but I'm just saying outworld entities are probably involved here. And since, we've been in contact with them, with the British Psychic Research Society, with things like the Gateway experiments, with all these different governmental institutions, very weird. So, why don't you, pull your head out and go look at the actual facts, and you'll see that quite clearly humanity, or certain factions of humanity, have been in contact with outworld entities since the days of the Witch of Endor. What do you think is going on there? How is it possible that shamanic tribes know how to make like ayahuasca? How is that? In the Amazon, 2 distinct plants that they've got to mix together. And you ask them, they say, oh, the plants told us. Okay, so sure, they just randomly figured that out over time by trying different plants and mixing them together in the most biologically diverse place on Earth. You know what the stats on that are like? Yeah, it's ridiculous. So clearly, there is an outworld influence which is involved here. And let's look a little bit at the idea of ancient structures and all that's been going on, and why all of a sudden there's these huge cataclysms that take things out. So there's a lost in Sumerian inscription, which isn't really lost, but we found this artifact, which suggests something was erased from history. There's a clay object in the Ashmolean Museum at Oxford, which is, where they steal all the stuff and then they put it in museums. So, the people, that way, well, it belongs in a museum. That way it's controlled. And most people walk by without stopping. It's a 4-sided prism, approximately 20 centimeters tall, perforated through its center, so it can be mounted on a wooden spindle and rotated. Weird. Each of its 4 sides is divided into 2 columns, and those columns are covered in cuneiform text pressed into the clay with a reed stylus, sometimes in this early 2nd millennium before the Common Era. Yeah, because they don't want to say before Christ anymore, because that's bad. The object was called the Weld-Blundell Prism, named after Herbert Weld-Blundell, an English antiquarian who purchased it in Baghdad in 1922 and donated it to the Ashmolean the following year. So he was a treasure hunter, and he bought it after it was looted, okay? And whoa, the museum has it now, but all this now is like, woo, super bad, super bad. You got to wonder what kind of artifacts are floating around that haven't been donated to these museums. It is the most complete surviving version of the Sumerian king list, documenting the Sumerians themselves, simply the Nam-Lugal kingship. And it goes on and talks about how there's a period where they're not really sure who was in charge, and there was this huge rift that occurred. Follow the link, check it out. It's fascinating stuff. Fascinating stuff. And what's really interesting is that the Roman legions, speaking of artifacts, the Roman legions had these eagles. These things they put on poles, and they were like a wreath with like an eagle on it and stuff like that. The Nazis did similar symbolism. But I'm trying to remember the actual, it's like a stanchion or the colors of the flag. It'll come to me eventually. But anyway, each legion had their symbol. They had this thing on the pole. And none of those survived. None of them. Out of all the Roman legions, they don't have one of them. And it's one of these like artifact treasures that makes me go, Vatican much? You think that maybe the Vatican has this stuff, but of course, you can't get into the Vatican because that's, totally off limits. Can't get in there. It's its own little private kingdom. Yeah. So, I don't have anything specifically against Catholics. I think Catholics are just people that are being farmed by the Vatican and have been effectively done so for a really long time. And I don't really have anything against, because the Vatican and Catholics, it's a human institution. So over 2,000 years, you're going to have a certain percentage of people that are corrupt. And that corruption doesn't leave. So eventually, it's only a matter of time before any human institution becomes completely corrupted. Sorry. Not much can be done about that. Which is why, Terence McKenna had his own particular style of doing things. And he said, no method, no guru, no teacher. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. I'm fallible. I'm not, anything special. Just a guy trying to talk to you like a friend and be like, hey, have you noticed that everything's kind of bonkers? What do you do there? So another thing that happened too, and this is, again, because I've got a total bone to pick with these idiots who are archaeologists saying like, oh yeah, the ancient alien guys. Well, there's this funny thing that happened in 1177 BC, which is a symbolic marker for a time when the ancient world effectively came to an end for many societies of the Mediterranean world. Just stopped. Many respected historians argued that a perfect storm of disasters likely struck the Mediterranean and the Near East regions during the era. Before a sudden end of the Bronze Age had been a period of great prosperity and regional interconnectedness for centuries. Great empires, such as the Egyptians, the Mycenaeans, built massive places and traded luxury goods across the sea. The situation, however, turned dark when almost every major city suddenly burned to the ground. What? Scholars refer to the event as the Late Bronze Age collapse. It remains one of the biggest mysteries in human history. Huh. That's weird. Kind of Tower of Babel-ish. You know, like humanity working, humanity stops, check. Why did that happen? What are the IAs and stoppages of humanity? You know, like what happens there? Something... The period that follows the collapse is often referred to as the Dark Age, as cultural aspects such as the art of writing disappeared in many places such as Greek, where Linear B script fell out of use. It would take several centuries for the region to recover and for new societies to emerge. Wow. That's kind of wild, hey? Several centuries. That's nuts when you think about it. The amount of time that must have been involved with that almost makes you think that there was like some sort of harvesting. Or maybe there was, gods of Eden levels of some sort of other outworld entities trying to keep the cage intact for humanity. Maybe that's what's happening right now. We're on the verge of a really big cull, which we've all been expecting for quite some time, in fact. So maybe that's what's cooking up. Maybe that's what's coming down the pipe in the next little while. Which makes it a good reason for, yes, you too, to buy yourself a TW200 and make sure that you're not going to have to use major roads when the eventuality of you needing to go somewhere comes to fruition. Now, also going with this is let's keeping with the, hey, you so-called ivory tower archaeologists. I'm not talking about the noble people like Graham Hancock who have been taking it in the teeth since the dawn of time. And let's not forget, archaeology was a rich man's hobby for a very long time. These were people that would go exploring. I mean, archaeology in the Indiana Jones days was dope. These people were, busting into temples. They were doing all this stuff and like, oh, it was tragic. Oh, whatever, shut up. These people were out there and they wouldn't even have these artifacts now if these guys didn't exist. And yet, even to this day, there are people who have the guts to go out and look for these things themselves. Like, for example, there's an underwater city off the coast of Louisiana. What? Yeah, check this out. 50 miles east of New Orleans, in the depths of the Gulf of Mexico, there is something unusual lurking. A retired architect, an amateur archaeologist, as opposed to the professional archaeologists, who just make money because the government gives them money because they're sponsored by a university. So they're not really professional. They're kind of PR people. But anyway. But this guy, who's a total Chad, is by the name of George Gelly, has dedicated almost half his life to the study of what he considers to be a 12,000-year-old underwater city, just off the Chandelier Islands. He refers to it as Crescentis, and the theories that accompany it are as interesting as they are vexing. From 1974 through 2017, Gelly has now personally funded and made more than 40 trips to Chandelier Sound to demonstrate that Crescentis, C word, is under the Gulf and has developed close to a lifetime to the rightful cause. One of the most melodramatic of such assertions is a massive 280-foot pyramid coming out of the ocean floor, which Gelly claims emits electromagnetic energy that is strong enough to induce a Bose compass to spin in erratic patterns as they pass over it. Well, that's verifiable. And he claims that, does he? He claims that. He's the one who made, near the Chandelier Island, local fishermen have long been accustomed to compass turning off the straight paths and spinning giddily over the supposed pyramid site. Well, they're picking something up, and the compasses are going crazy. So it's not supposed, and he didn't cook this up. Fishermen are like, yeah, hey, you know what? You get to this area, and you got this weird world breach anomaly type thing going on. First-hand testimony which at first creates a serious interest in the nature of the surface beneath the waters. In Louisiana and Mississippi, granite is not produced naturally, but the terrific masses of granite appearing on the bottom of the sea at Chandelier Sound, the geologic puzzle makes the basis for the whole Gelin theory of antiquity. Now, what is the scientific consensus? What do these good, noble archaeological people claim is the reason for this? Why does this happen? Well, I'll tell you. It's because ships were sailing there They thought it was too shallow. The waters were too shallow, so they threw all their granite ballast overboard. And that's what the granite is, even though granite's not indicative to the area because, of course, ships just dropped it there. And that's why there's granite stacked up in formations, because it was dropped from boats. I'm not even making that up. That's legitimate what they say it is. And archaeologists will cling to that. I mean, that guy could bring up a sphinx and they would just be, oh yeah, well, that was thrown overboard. Like mental, okay? Like how crazy do you have to be? But that is the level of ignorance and the level of just the mind veil, the blocking, the conscious blocking, which is in place in our society. So I personally think that going forward and finding these things, this guy's been trying to kind of go forward with this information since the 70s. Oh, he's crazy. Is he? Can't be that crazy. I mean, he's funding all of this. He's an architect. He's not an idiot, right? Where's he getting the cash from? If he was a moron, he wouldn't be able to do all this stuff. So what gives? Why is it happening? Maybe we should check that out. Maybe if you live in Louisiana, you should check that out. Maybe I should see if I could talk to this guy. I'd love to get an interview a cat like that. Maybe do some long-form interviews. That'd be kind of interesting, hey? See what his particular angle is. See if we could get some traction here where the guy doesn't have to just constantly rehash the same crap and answer the same stupid questions that the so-called debunkers, which really, people who try to do that stuff insult everyone's intelligence and they make everyone dumber for just listening to them. It makes me nuts. But every now and again, you get somebody who is very sharp, who comes out with something that no one, like a few years ago, this would have caused world headlines, but now it doesn't. There's an astronaut, J.F. Clervoy, who said, yeah, UFOs are real. They exist. They're a real thing. Now, bet you didn't know about this, but, you know, now it's a thing because the Overton window has shifted. In an interview published on the 31st of March, 2026, Jean-Francois Clervoy, flight engineer during the Hubble Space Telescope repair mission, provided answers to questions regarding UFOs. We're also asked, do you believe in UFOs? Do you believe in UFOs? He was asked. Well, first of all, it's not a matter of belief. Within this question, there are actually two questions. One is the UFO phenomenon, which we now call UAP. No, that's what you call UAP because the world's made of words, and which can sometimes manifest as a visible object. At other time, it's a luminous phenomenon. For example, a phenomenon. Yeah. The phenomenon is a proven fact. UFOs exist. There are a few cases where we have sufficient eyewitness accounts from people on the ground, pilots and aircraft and radar traces. Even if they're not very numerous, the phenomenon has occurred. Yeah, you only need one. You only need one. We got this stuff going on in Virginia. What's that about? I mean, and yet, people will not look at the Bigfoot phenomenon because, you know, that's just crazy pants. That's just crazy pants. Wait for it. That's coming. That's coming. Now, this guy went on to say, he goes, are they extraterrestrial intelligence or not? Well, it's the simplest explanation. It's also the least likely. We need to consider both possibilities, don't we? If we want to come up with an explanation using our limited imagination, we have to conjure up some very convoluted scenarios. However, he says, it's probably not extraterrestrial intelligence. Nevertheless, the search for extraterrestrial life is a serious matter and a primary scientific objective of solar system exploratory missions today. So if it's not an extraterrestrial intelligence, and it's a non-human intelligence, and it's not extraterrestrial, that means it's ultra-terrestrial. That means it's from some other place. It means, where does it go? That's the question. Where do they go? Not if they exist. We know they exist. That's not the question. Just like Bigfoot. We know it's real. The question is not, does it exist? The question is, where does it go? And that's the question they don't want you to ask. That's why nobody takes Bigfoot seriously, because once you start asking that, the transdimensional hypothesis, the ultra-terrestrial hypothesis, suddenly becomes very, very scary. Now, here's something. If something was from another dimension, right, and they had to exist in this dimension, it would be hard for them. You know, it's like when you dream, and you can only be in the dream for so long, and then you have to wake up. And I think that's kind of how this works. So you have to kind of find a way so that you can sort of become part of that dimension. You know, you can somehow, I don't know, hybridize yourself with beings in that world. Like the hybrid breeding program, which apparently has been talked about for quite some time. Well, let's talk about the former Congressman Matt Gaetz of Florida claimed that the U.S. government is forcibly mating captive humans with space aliens in order to breed beings capable of communicating with extraterrestrials. Now, let's just back up here a touch. They're making captive humans breed with non-human intelligences to breed beings capable of communicating with extraterrestrials because they have to do it with telepathy, right? They have to use these sort of abilities that don't make them extraterrestrials, they make them ultra-terrestrials. But it's a clever little bit of, sleight of hand there. Gaetz said that a senior Army enlisted man and whistleblower told him about the program while Gaetz was in Congress. He said that humans used for mating were captured from war zones or undocumented immigrants, which is an interesting way of phrasing that. Gaetz alleged that the government has at least 6 breeding facilities where they're trying to hybridize people so they can deal with these non-human intelligences and these outworld entities. Very interesting. Now, Gaetz, the article goes on and tries to just murder the guy. Gaetz left Congress in 2024 when Donald Trump announced he would be nominated. He would be nominated for Attorney General. He declined the nomination, resigned from Congress under the cloud of allegations involving sex trafficking, statutory rape, and paying underage girls for sex. Which is weird because, we got the Epstein files where there's all these people that are, without a doubt, doing that. And the Department of Justice never pressed charges. So they smear the guy. He claims it's a smear campaign. He was never convicted of anything. And then he was drummed out. That's weird, And all you got to do is be accused, right? Well, they wouldn't have accused him if there wasn't. No, sorry. We all know now that, guys it seems like more likely that you're guilty of that if you're in power than if you're drummed out. Maybe he wouldn't do it. Because if they had the blackmail, why didn't they just, why wouldn't they do that? In the age of ping pong pizza and Epstein, this guy gets smeared, but there's no convictions. If there was fire there, they would have nailed this guy to the floor. I mean, man, they buried Martha Stewart on insider trading charges, dude. Are you kidding me? If they had anything, they would have just murdered this cat. But no. But it's just crazy on its face. Talking about breeding program and wasn't there? Wasn't there a guy named Michael Herrera? Links in description. A former Marine, Michael Herrera, which tells in part about a 3-part series. Herrera and his team were tasked with responding to a major earthquake and tsunami in Indonesia, providing overwatch and logistical support. And they came across face-to-face with a UAP, a UFO, and ambushed by an unmarked shadow unit of operators that were taking people in for some kind of program that was working with non-human intelligence, which sounds an awful lot like exactly what Gaetz was talking about. Isn't that the same thing? Isn't there a connection there? That seems sort of corroborating, don't you think? Well, that's exactly what he's talking about. So that's weird, hey? But if that, it's probably just a guy, that's just a coincidence, right? 1's just a dude, 2's a coincidence, 3rd would be a pattern. We don't really have a 3rd, unless, of course, you think about Dan Sherman, who's Sergeant Dan Sherman, who was a former NSA electronic intelligence specialist who claims to have been part of a classified project called Project Preserve Destiny, a Cold War-era program designed to create intuitive communicators capable of relaying messages from non-human intelligences. That's weird. Sherman reveals chilling details for his time inside the NSA facilities, retina scans, blue vans, and underground black box rooms where soldiers were dosed, monitored, and trained to think in frequencies. Well, so that would provide, a back history on a very similar program that they're talking about here. This is exactly the same thing. And this is known. Why I'm not the smartest guy in the room. Why is nobody else drawing these connections? Obviously, there's something going on here. Obviously, there's something going on. We all know it. And we live in a reality where we watch buildings fall in their own imprint and nobody wakes up. They believe building 7 fell down with nothing hitting it. This building just fell down out of what? Sympathetic magic? And yet people just can't, like, building 7, what caused that? What vibrations? Like, what is that? And then somehow it misses people. They can't grasp it because the horror of the reality, if that's true, is so bad. They cannot face reality. And I put it to you that you can. I put it to you that you can. Not only that you can, that you must. You must face this reality that we're living in. Because the stakes are too high. They're too high for me, for you, for the children, for your neighbors' children, for people that are out there in the world. But for you directly, there will come a day when I won't be able to broadcast anymore. I mean, who knows? Something could happen. And if that were to happen, we'll all just be for nothing. We'll all just be like lost in the jet stream, just in the wash. Everyone will just change the channel. Maybe. But, my hope springs eternal that there'll be somebody out there who can, maybe something I said will like ring a bell and they'll pick up a book. They'll look into the British Psychic Research Society. Oh, what was that all about? I'm reading a book about them right now. I'll talk about them next week, which is a really good audiobook if you want to check it out. But I'll talk about that next week. But for now, I think we need to come to the terrifying conclusion that we are actually fairly powerless. We're being farmed, and we need to be aware of that. We need to look that horror in the face and not, go off screaming into a new dark age. We need to be able to look at that and say, okay, that's where we're at. That's where we're standing right now. And as everyone else mocks you, and everyone else turns their heads away, and they go back to more sport ball and everything else that is the bread and circus of our culture, you need to have the strength to stand on your own without validation and do your own research. Talk to people. Go outside, investigate these things. Because when you do, there's a freedom that comes from that no one will ever be able to take away.